guys, and welcome back. Is it hump day today? It is hump day today, huh? Happy Wednesday. I'm having my breakfast. So never mind me. How did y'all like my last video? I was out in Brooklyn on a nice nature walk, perusing Flatbush area. I think I overcooked these eggs. It's like either I overcooked eggs or I don't let them go long enough. What is that about? Got the elderberry on deck. Yes, such a good combination. So on my eggs, I don't know if you guys can see, but I have some salt and pepper on my eggs. This is how I love it. This should be an interesting video. It's actually a follow-up to an earlier video that I did. It was a 3-part series I did on race play and interracial relationships. And the person who requested the video, actually back in May, that I did a 3-part response to, sent me an email yesterday. I was like, okay. The yolk just fell out. Come back in here, buddy. You're gonna get eaten. I woke up this morning and it felt like it was gonna rain. Just felt like kind of droggy, I don't know. It felt like the weather is changing. Granted, the sun is out, but I sense rainfall coming soon. Actually would be nice. I should have got a napkin. Oh well. Who cares? Who cares if I clean my nails with my teeth? When I see your face, it's not a thing that I would change. That's what I was just listening to before I started the live video. What do I do? Are you a blogger or an author? I'm both. I'm a vlogger. I make videos. But that's just something I do for fun on the side. I do a number of things. social entrepreneur. So, I want to put this down. It tastes so good. I don't drink tea that often, but when I do, it hit the spot. Because I woke up feeling like low energy this morning. And I'm like, what the fuck? But that happens to me. I'm used to it. I have my waves of high and low energy. All right, let's get into this. So as I was saying, I actually had received an inbox message. This was back in May from someone who had stumbled across my YouTube channel. And they were impressed by some of my videos. And they shared with me their perspective, as like most of you guys have come to me. And this person's asking me, like, what do I do? Like, anything involving the subject at hand. I'm not necessarily directly involved with the cuckold lifestyle, though you can consider like cuckold under the umbrella of kink. And I do identify myself as a submissive woman. I study human behavior. That's what I do. And so, yeah, this person had come to me and wanted me to talk about my perspective on his situation. He's a white male. I had to like refresh my memory. I was just like, yo, this is 5 months ago. It feels like 5 years ago, but it was just 5 months ago. And in his recent email, which I'm going to read, he sent me an email yesterday, kind of like a follow-up, a 5-month follow-up, right? And is that 5 months or 4 months? Okay, he emailed me back in May. It's September, so that's 4 months. All right. And so I'm like, okay, I remember him. It kind of rang a bell when he began to mention children, right? Because I've gotten a number of responses from you guys who are involved in the cuckold lifestyle. But I think he is the only one who has mentioned children. Like, he actually has children. And not only does he have children, right? But a child was conceived as a byproduct of him and his wife lifestyle, right? The cuckold lifestyle. Now, he's a cook, and he gives his wife permission to have sex and play, have multiple play partners and play with other men. And so he was telling me, like, this was back in May, he was telling me that he has been 3 years involved in this lifestyle. So it's relatively new to him. And he told me that, he's a part of this group on FetLife. It's like an interracial group, and people, link up, which is not uncommon on FetLife. People link up. They have play parties, they have fun, right? And so he was telling me about some conversations that were being had in the group amongst people from different races. And he's saying that there was a black guy in the group who wants to be called nigger. Perhaps by men or women that he's sexually involved with, right? And so he wants to get my perspective on that, which I've shared my perspective on that in my response video, 3-part response video that I did on race play and interracial relationships. And then if I recall correctly, I believe this guy who I'm making this video about also indicated that his black wife, who he's married to right now, called some cracker. Right? And I'm like, And, this is something he mentioned, right, beforehand in May. He's wanting to get my take on it. Of course, I provided my take on it, right? But what I like about him and other men who have messaged me, white men in particular, is that we don't have to agree on everything. We don't have to agree on my perspective. Of course, my perspective may be different than your perspective, right? But there is a mutual respect for each other's perspectives. We can share and exchange ideas, and those ideas may be different, right? It may contradict, but it doesn't interfere with our ability to be able to have discourse, right? So me and him, this guy, we were going back and forth, but even though I shared my perspective on the racial aspect of his relationship dynamic, and he did agree with some parts, but he disagreed with others, and you guys can go back and watch that. It didn't get in the way, right? We were still able to have a back and forth conversation, so I like that. I find it interesting, though, because he comes back yesterday. He messages me yesterday. Now, granted, like I said, during the course of this 3-year time that he's been involved in the cuckold relationship, right? He's explored, cuckolding, this alternative lifestyle with his wife, his black wife, female partner. He's a white man. During one of the play exchanges, right, with his wife, right, having relations with a cuckold. Now, this is my question. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if the bull that she had these play exchanges with is black or white. What is the race? I don't recall him mentioning that. But he says, though, as a result, a baby came. She got pregnant, and it's not his child. I had the same reaction when I responded the first time. I think that's funny. Because it just like kind of spices up the story a bit. It's just like, aha. And I think the funny part about it is that he wanted it to remain a secret in a way. He's like, oh, her family doesn't know. That's the funny part about it. When grown people want to keep things private, like they're hiding. That's funny to me. That's funny. Now I get it. Yeah, some things, okay, are a bit sensitive. And so you feel like, okay, it should remain private because you don't want everyone in your business because you don't care to hear other people's perspective, right? But it's just like, this is a family that he's created, right? They both co-created, and then they're hiding the fact that an offspring that came as a result of her having sex with a bull, right? With someone outside of their relationship, got her pregnant, right? And it's not his child. And he's like, her family doesn't know. I'm like, listen. Now her family, she's black. She comes from a black family, obviously, right? But I'm thinking, how don't they know? I'm pretty sure they know, right? The thing about black people, we be knowing shit. We know. And I don't think it's just black people, right? Family, no. They have a sense. But they may not say anything. They may carry on as if they don't know. Right? And just go along with the go along. They don't make it, if you don't make something a big to-do, oftentimes family, out of respect, they may know something about you, right? And that may be kind of off, but if it's not a problem for you, it's not bothering you, they may not make it a big deal. Why open a can of worms, right? That's for you to do as, You know what I'm saying? Like y'all are grown people. You're a grown couple. That's for you to do. If you guys want to go to her family and break the news, that's on you. Why should they question and say, "Oh, this child doesn't look like him"? Like, is it really? Like, that's kind of out of place. What do you think they'll be out of place? Let's say the child was yours, but it didn't resemble you. Like, wouldn't that be out of place of her family to confront you and her and say, "Oh, is this really your child?" To question that? Like, if it's not an issue that she brought up, right? Like, okay. So that's my line of thinking with respect to that. About the family not knowing. And he kind of mentioned that again. I'm going to read you guys the email that he sent me yesterday. But he kind of brought that back up again to say, oh, the family... Her family, we still, I don't think that that they know, right? Her family still doesn't know. But for him to even like keep bringing it up about them knowing, it's like he wants to tell them. It's just a matter of how to go about it. And then also how he continues to bring up like the child. This offspring that came as a result of her being fucked by a play partner outside of her marriage, right? That he was consenting to. It's not like she went behind his back. And a child came as a result of this. And he's like, he brought it up like, oh, you know, I'm not the biological father. Granted, this is their first child, so to speak. But it's not his biological child. But he says, oh, I treat it as my child. Alright. You may intentionally try to treat that child equal because they do actually have a child together. So they have two children. The first child that she gave birth to obviously isn't his biological child. It's her bull's. Then the second child that came from her womb is a child that they share biologically together. And he's like, oh, I treat both of them the same. Like, I had to challenge that, right? Which, of course, you know, he challenged it back and disagreed. And I'm just like, there's always a bias. Oftentimes a bias is subconscious. We are unaware. But everyone has a bias, right? To say, oh no, I treat everybody the same. I don't see race, for example. It's bullshit. Because if you really observe and pay attention, you'll see the certain small nuances of behavior and how we interact with people based on their differences, right? And it may not be on a conscious level, like that you are aware of, right? But I'm sure that there are differences in how you interact and respond, you interact with and respond to these two different children that came from her womb. There's a difference. Even if they were both biologically yours, there still will be a difference in how you interact with them because they are different. They're different people. Even if they both came from both of you guys, they're still different children. Like, I laugh when parents say, oh no, like I treat all my children the same, I love all my children the same. No, you don't. Not exactly the same. You can't say to 100% at a 100% rate that you love all of your children in the same way, or you treat them all the same way, interact with them all that you don't. You just don't. And it helps to know, like, to draw attention to how you may interact with both children differently. Now, you mentioned the first child is, I think, a female. The second child, I don't know the gender or the sex of that child, right? But even that alone, just sex differences, right? You're going to interact with them differently. And you love them differently, in different ways. The child can pick up on that too. The child will pick up on that. So let me go ahead and just read this email. He says, hello. So my wife and I, he sent this email yesterday at 10:10 in the morning, actually before I went live to do the part 4 of cuckolding in the UK. And he says, so my wife and I were talking the other day about continuing our activities. You mentioned in one of your last videos you thought it would be a good idea that our child knows who their biological father is. Possibly, yeah. Possibly. I think I kind of like alluded to the fact, right? Because like when I put something out there, I may say a statement. It's just get you to think. Right? It's get you to see things from a different perspective than probably what you have seen it before, right? It's not to say I'm advising you or you need to do this. I'm not the person to tell you what you need to do, right? Or what you should do, unless it's like life or death. And even in those cases, like, I'm about pro-choice, right? So I may have put the idea out there, but that's for you to kind of play with. That's for you to sit down and think about what are the implications if this child knows. Now, you say you and your wife have been involved in this lifestyle of the past 3 years. That's relatively a short span of time, right? So, with that, when you say her child came as a result, of her playing with other men, I'm assuming the child is less than 3 years old. Right? So the question is, should the child know at this age, right now, who her biological father is? That's a very loaded question. You emailed me? Okay, great. That's a very loaded question because you ask yourself, is it necessary for the child to know at this age? Let's say the child is, 2, 3, or under 5, right? Let's say the child is under 5, right? And then you also have another child. So the child has a sibling. Should the child know that you are not the biological father? Though you are her father because you're raising her, you're nurturing her, you're guiding her. So you are her father. Is it necessary to tell her that you're not her biological father, though? My thing is, this is my thought. Will she be able to understand what that even means? Right? Because up until a certain age, it's just like children really don't even understand where babies come from necessarily, right? Like, a child can be 2 years old, right? And then a mother can be pregnant with their sibling. And a child may know, like, oh, it's a baby in there. The baby, is in the mommy's stomach. But they don't really, do they really grasp, like, the full understanding of, like, how babies are made, right? And the whole concept of biological versus, let's say, a surrogate, right? Or the sperm donor father. Like, do they really understand that? Not really so much at that age. It depends, though. It depends on the cognitive ability of your child. Because some children will amaze you. So to tell your child that you are not the biological father, let's say if they're under 5 and they don't really quite grasp it, it's just like, okay, what will be the point? It kind of will be pointless at that age, right? But then, and it could create even more problems too, though, because, them having a sibling and you being the biological father of the second child or sibling, is like, okay, that could create feelings of, like, insecurity in that child. Because there's, like, they're comparing themselves to the other child. Like, okay, well, if you're the biological father of this child, my sibling, but you're not my father, then where is my father? Why isn't my father here? Like, my sibling gets to have both their mother and their father, but you're not my father? Some kids don't quite get that. Even older kids, like kids, let's say in middle school, because I saw a video and it's like the father was trying to explain to the child like he wasn't the father, but the child was like, "No, you are my father," and it was kind of sad, right? He was like, "No, you are my father, and that's my brother," and he's like, "Yeah, I am, but I'm not your biological father." It's like that becomes problematic. But it can also be problematic for that child to get older and not know that you are not their real father or biological father, so to speak, right? And all this long ass time, they thought that you were. Just to get older and reach high school, become a young adult, 18 years old, and then learn that you're not. Because the shit will hit the fan. Truth will always come out, right? How long can you carry this secret before it actually becomes an issue that needs to be tabled, that needs to be discussed? Like, how long can you hold this a secret from this child and also from the child's maternal family, right? Like, her mother's family, you're saying, don't know. All right, let's keep reading, right? That's just the first couple lines. He says, "Why would this be a good thing for our child to know?" When the child gets older, I mean, think about it. The child has a black mother, right? So, I don't think you mentioned like the ethnic background of the mother. But it is a thing. It's a thing within black people, African American people, to learn their ancestry, to know their roots, where they come from. So perhaps one day when that child gets to a certain age, maybe they want to do a DNA test. Now, I'm not saying that DNA tests are accurate, because I have my own belief on those African ancestry, DNA tests, right? But people believe they're accurate. So let's say she wants to take a DNA test just to determine where her lineage is. And you can do it through your maternal line and your paternal line. Do you see where that can be a problem? Do you see where that can be a problem? Because you're not her biological father, so it will be pointless to pretend like to do the whole test, a swab. And why would you even do that? Like, that's silly. She'll learn about, your roots, but your roots aren't connected to her biologically, necessarily. Right? She wants to know her biological lineage from her biological parents. So, it sounds like it can be a complicated situation, but I don't think so, because it's really about communication. Communication is the best policy. What I'm hearing is that there's a lot of anxiety and fear surrounding this situation that you both created. You say, if I have already accepted her as my own child, what's the use to tell my child who their biological father is, or who we believe he is? And you already said that you didn't know. You mentioned like, she slept with a number of different men, so you don't know anyway. If I can recall correctly from your earlier emails back in May, and I did skim them before I started this video, you mentioned like, y'all don't really know, because she was sleeping with different men. She was playing. And it was a consensual thing that you say you allow her to do, because you get off on seeing your wife pleasured by other men. Okay, so boom, she got pregnant. You don't quite know who he is, but you say, now you're saying you believe. So you see, that kind of changed. That's different than what you said before. maybe because now the baby is getting older, so the features are becoming more pronounced. And you can recall. Would you still even be in contact with those guys, though? Does she still have contact? So you say, Father is who raised you, not who made you. That's one way of looking at it. But it still doesn't take away from everyone has a biological mother and a biological father. And they should, I think, they should know who they are. Even if, because I work with foster care kids. A lot of foster care kids do not know their parents. I work with foster care kids. This was like when I first graduated college back in 2006. And there are kids who like literally get dropped off like at birth. One of the kids was like found in a dumpster. His mom put him in a dumpster. You know, so he never really knew his mom. And it showed. Definitely, I mean, you can tell when kids don't grow up by their biological parents, because we know, like, the nature of human beings, we know. So to think that you're keeping something a secret, you're not. We know, man. And I think that, yeah, children should be entitled to know. Because they're going to be curious to know, who is my real mother? Who is my biological mother? Who is my real father? Who is my biological father? Just for their own peace sake. You know what I'm saying? You know, and they can do something with that information once they get the name, right? The birth name of their biological parents, you know, and the city and state where they were born, you know, birthday. They can do something with that information to know, you know, what is their lineage, what line did they come through into this world. Why withhold that information from a child? Alright. He goes on to say, we don't think it would be a good idea based on the circumstances of how she was conceived. So what? Are you ashamed? I'm hearing like shame now coming up, right? Because that would be a conversation you would have, and it's just all in how you frame the conversation. I mean, I have a good college friend. We were like this in college. We lived in the same dorm, not the same dorm room, but in the same building. Spent a lot of time together. Like when I was big on Christianity, we used to like be, you know, prayer partners and all of that, right? And she eventually discovered who she really is, right? And found that she really wants to be with a woman. She's tried, you know, her luck with men. It didn't work out. And so at some point in her development, after she graduated college, she discovered she really wanted to be with a woman. And she married a woman. And they now have a beautiful daughter that was created through the IVF process, which she walked me through and told me about all the different steps. A lot of medication she had to take. But I thought it was fascinating. And then, you know, of course she's on social media, so she posts, you know, regular pictures of her child's, you know, development. And she actually had a vlog too, where she was vlogging like the process of her and her partner, you know, going through this IVF process from the beginning, like all the way through the end, with him giving birth to the baby. Now, my friend, she is like a femme, so her wife is, you know, more dom or whatever. And I just thought the process was interesting, right? But the question is, as it relates to this, how do you tell the child, or should you tell the child, right? I don't think it's a matter of should you. I think it's a matter of how. Because it's like, they're gonna know. Oh, they're gonna know, right? It's just like, it's kind of common sense. Especially in that situation. You're talking about two women. The child's gonna know, okay, two women can't biologically create, a child. It takes sperm, it takes egg, you know what I'm saying? Now, I thought it was unique that with the first child, because they're going to have multiple children, and she did freeze her eggs. But with the first extraction for her eggs, like, it came from, they took the eggs from her partner, right? The stud, you know what I'm saying? And picked out, they went to a sperm bank, picked out a father to do the IVF with, and they did it, right? And then after the conception took place, obviously outside of her womb, it was inserted, into her womb. And she carried the baby full term. And then the second one, she told me that she's going to use her eggs, you know what I'm saying, the femme's eggs, to make their second child. But yeah, the question is like, okay, how do you break the news to the child? The child is going to be like, okay, who is my dad? I see that, okay, I have two moms, which could be very fortunate for some children, right? Kind of cool. Everything has its ups and downs, right? But it's like, okay, who's my dad? And then they have to be quite frank and honest. There's a way that they're going to communicate that to the child. Question is how. That's the question. It's not if, it's how and when. How would you guys communicate that? In this scenario, in this particular scenario, how would you communicate that? To the child about how they came to exist in this world that we live in. I have an idea of how to go about it. There's different ways, I think, to reach children. Now, y'all know me. For me, I'm really big on literature, books. And I follow different people, like, social media. And there was this young mother. She already has a 2-year-old, and she's about to give birth to her second child. And from watching, like, observing, like, the way, like, she interacts with her child and vice versa, I got the sense that her child really quite doesn't know that she's pregnant, and she's what, 7 months pregnant, right? So she's showing clearly, right? But I got the sense that the child didn't really know or understand that she's pregnant. Her mother is pregnant, and the baby is going to be here in a couple months. And so I asked her, I said, does she know? And she was like, I don't know. Now, if you could ask yourself that, okay, you say, I don't know, then she doesn't know. Because you would know if your child knows that you're pregnant, right? She doesn't. She was like, let me ask her. So she asked her, like, during the live video, she was like, you know that mommy's having a baby? She just completely, like, dismissed it, right? It didn't register. But I think now that I mentioned that, she's making an attempt to, like, educate her. And it can be difficult to how you can reach her children, especially at that young. She's only 2 years old, but she's very bright. She probably has, like, superior intelligence. Like, especially her verbal ability is, like, on fucking 100, yo. It's up there. And so, I suggested that maybe, like, books, because she likes to read. She is fascinated with learning in picture books and stuff like that. So I'm like, maybe you can introduce the concept to her through a book. Now, are there any children's books on cuckolding? Hell no. Maybe you can write one, right? It doesn't have to be on cuckolding though. It could just be on the different ways that babies are conceived, right? It doesn't have to be as specific as, okay, cuckolding, you know. It's different, so many different ways that children are conceived. And it doesn't negate from the beauty of it, the uniqueness of it. You know what I'm saying? The miracle of childbirth. It doesn't take away from that based on how they're conceived. It's still a miracle that the baby was conceived and is born. Doesn't matter really how. I mean, it does, but doesn't. What I'm saying, doesn't take away from it. It's still a miraculous process. So, going on, he says, also our families don't know. We thought her family knew, but now we think they do not. So you're like going back and forth. Part of you feel like they know, her family anyway, her family knows. Part of you feel like, they don't know. What, I'm wondering, at what moments do you feel like they know, right? What gives you the indication when you felt like they knew? You say, we thought her family knew. What was a sign? What was the indication that you felt? Because it's something there, right? If you say that y'all thought that her family knew, that's something there, right? It's something that is telling you guys, okay, they know. But now you're having doubts that they know, thinking they don't know now. All right, going forward. He says, what and why would it be a good thing to know who her biological father is? I just think it's interesting that we're revisiting this, right? Because this is a discussion, I think, like, I mean, it was kind of like a closed kind of discussion in a way. Like, he introduced his situation to me. I expressed my thoughts on it. He had a follow-up to my first video. I made a second video. He had a follow-up to that via email. I made a third video. And I thought it was done. But for him to bring it back up is like, okay, the question has resurfaced. For him to still be wrestling or playing with the idea as to should they tell this daughter who is not getting younger but getting older who her biological father is, that just gives me the sense that you feel inclined to. It's like part of you is just like pulling you in that direction, right? But you don't know how to. You don't know how to. And what's pulling you in that direction is what you say here next. Because you go on to say, with that being said, my wife and I were talking about having a third child. Go figure. She kind of wants to have another child by a different man. Right now, I am on the fence about this, about the idea. Why are you on the fence about it? Because you quite haven't resolved the issue at hand with the first child not knowing who her biological father is, and so to go and consent to your wife creating a whole nother child without a biological father. Now I want to go back because you mentioned that you're feeling like a sense that her family doesn't know. That makes me wonder, which I don't think it was made clear in your previous emails. I know you mentioned that your wife is dark complected, but what was the race of the bull? Or the complexion of the bull for that matter? Because something ain't adding up. If your wife is dark complected and you are white, okay, that baby, if it was your biological baby, right? Given that you say that's what her family thinks it is, that baby still would have a different kind of complexion. It would not have that complexion of the mother unless you guys live in a very tropical climate. That could be likely. And that the gene that is responsible for color, right, in terms of the melanin, and that child could have taken on the dominant gene from the mother and not you. And epigenetically, it would more likely have a darker skin because of the environment is conducive to that, right? Before the child is even born. It's like genes are kind of made, right? Like the way our bodies work, they're made when in terms of conception, and the expression of certain genes, I think, are chosen based on not just like our genetics, but also like our environment that we live in. So it depends on where you guys live. Now the funny thing about this guy, he doesn't say like their age, his profession. Like he definitely wants to remain anonymous, because he don't say nothing about like his age, what kind of work he does, where does he live geographically. Doesn't say anything about that. I respect that. But yeah, the complexion of the child is just like, and not only the complexion, but the features, the phenotype of the child. What kind of hair does a child have? Because it's a no-brainer. That child would not be yours. You can just look at the phenotype, you know what I'm saying, of a child to be able to tell, right? Something wouldn't be adding up. So that's how her family would know, like, okay, something ain't adding up. Because she's dark complected, and the child, let's say, is dark complected, it would not come out as dark as she is, though, with your genes. Your genes will have to have some role in that child's phenotype, that child's genotype. Like, your genes will have some role, even though they say, like, white is recessive, they would show up in some way, right? Whether in the eye color, you know, in the complexion of the skin, the hair texture, somewhere, right? If that was your child, right? So it wouldn't make sense. Now, granted, like, if she had sex with and got pregnant by a black man, perhaps he was mixed. So it could pass as your child if the bull that she slept with, you know what I'm saying, was mixed race, right? I don't know. I don't think you mentioned, you know, the race of the bull. But that's something that comes to my mind. But you're on the fence about the idea of her doing this again, so that you guys can have a third child. I think the idea is interesting and exciting. However, back to what you said before, it's interesting that you go back to what I said before. I feel like, don't put it on me, it's your own convictions. Listen, this is your own conviction. I just threw a thought out there. What you do with that thought is you, and how you resonate with the thought that I put out there in my video, that's you. Own that. You know what I'm saying? Just say you felt a sense of conviction just by me raising awareness on a certain aspect of this scenario that you guys created here, you know, which would have come up anyway. It's not like I said something that was so groundbreaking and revolutionary that you wouldn't have thought about. That was already going to come to the surface anyway, about, okay, you know, the possibility of the child, you know, needing to know who her biological father is, right? We're just having a discussion around it, and I'm giving you my perspective. And you feel a sense of conviction about your responsibility in this matter. I mean, you have a responsibility, and your wife obviously has a responsibility. But y'all do, I feel like, come on, it's your life. That's the beauty of just we live in America. Maybe if this was a different country, maybe, I don't know, you wouldn't have these kind of liberties. But I mean, to American credit, it's just like we have the liberty. You kind of can do kind of what you want to do, right? And not be ostracized or fucking castigated or thrown in jail for it. So if y'all want to go out there and have a whole nother child through a cuckold situation, then that's your choice. Of course, there are consequences to that, good and bad. But that's still your choice. And I think it's important to weigh that out, considering you guys already went down that path, and considering what you're already facing with the first child, right? These implications and ramifications surrounding this child that was created as a product of your wife having fun and making you a cuckold. It's just like, okay, you guys have fun, you have a child that is a product of this. Do you want to go and do it again, right? Like, I'm curious, what is driving you guys to want to do it again? Like, is it about sex, right? Like, the excitement you get and she gets from her just having sex with other men? You know, is it the breeding aspect of it? Maybe it's breeding. Some people are turned on by, breeding. And if that's the case, then just, own it. Nothing can get in the way. Nothing I can say or anyone else can say really will stop you, because at the end of the day, you are going to make your own decision on this matter, on how you want to proceed with it. But you ask, is there a benefit? Of course, there's a benefit. You're asking, what is a benefit? In other words, peace of mind, because it's going to keep coming up in your conscious, yo. It's resting in your conscious, and you push it to your subconscious mind. You try to repress it, but it's going to keep popping up anyway. So once you face fear and you handle the shit, then it's out there, all right? And so then her family knows, all right, what can get any... I think you're concerned about how you're going to be seen by her family, right? Y'all already in an interracial relationship. That's already taboo enough. I feel like that's already like, that's kind of bizarre, so to speak. Especially in the context of society which we live in, right? And especially when racial tensions are high. Now, I say in this month of September 2021, are racial tensions high? Not necessarily by comparison to what it could be. And historically how things have been, considering the focus isn't really on racial tensions right now in our society here in America. It's really on COVID and the vaccine, right? But let an incident happen that is popularized by the media, and the media gets a hold of it, they blow shit up, then racial tensions surface, right? And there's riots, and that affects us on an individual and an interpersonal level when these social events happen in our society. And so that's still a backdrop, right? Like, racial tensions, although they may not be high at the current present moment, it's still a backdrop to our society, and the fact that you guys are already an interracial couple. It's just like, it's clear that y'all go against the grain anyway, right? You're not really seeking anyone's approval. So to take it a step beyond that, to do, an open marriage, so to speak, or cuckold relationship, I don't see how that is that far-fetched, right, from what you're already doing anyway. Because what your relationship, your interracial relationship, is a bold statement, right? I don't think people understand how bold that is, but that's bold, okay? So once you accept that, come to terms with that, and just be. You'll be fine. What else is there to worry about? Apparently y'all like having children, you know. So maybe that would equal out what that first child may feel. At least they'll have somebody else to identify with. That would make things a bit, I think, easier for the little girl that y'all have, who was conceived, you know, through this cuckold deal here. You know, to have a sibling that also was conceived in the same way, she wouldn't feel necessarily as much of an outcast, you know, when she does find out that her and her current sibling don't have the same mom and dad. Right? So that would be an interesting dynamic to see play out if and when you and her mother, your wife, decide to go forward with this third child that y'all want to create through a cuckold relationship. So that's my perspective on it. I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this. It's interesting. I like how when I kind of tried to contextualize his proclivity to this racial dynamic, right? He immediately refuted the idea. It's like, hold on, you ain't about to analyze me. And, you know, we got past that. I mean, cool. Some people don't necessarily want to have their situation psychologized or look at through like a psychodynamic lens to link it back to childhood or a generational context in terms of, you know, it being an interracial relationship. I think there's something there. But he didn't want to kind of interpret it through that lens, to look beyond it simply being an interracial relationship, which of course I did. But he rejected the idea, you know, because I'm like, it's something there, like, and for him to mention, you know, this whole fantasy or desire, you know, for his wife to call him cracker. I'm like, yo, that's what we do in the South. We call white people crackers down there. And of course, you know, they call us niggers. And that shit still goes on to this day. So that will be like the racial context for understanding certain present day interactions and how we relate to each other, because that's a historical context, right? But on that note, I'm going to end this video. Leave your comments below. Share your thoughts. Share this video. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.